All right, let's dive right into this explainer. For the absolutely longest time, the smartphone industry honestly felt like it was just stuck on repeat, didn't it? Every single year, we'd get a slightly faster, maybe a slightly thinner, but ultimately still just a flat glass rectangle. But then, a massive paradigm shift happened. Today, we're tracing the fascinating, rapidly expanding foldable universe. It really makes you wonder, right? What actually happens when our digital world stops being trapped behind a static, flat piece of glass?
Now, if you were paying attention to the early teaser trailers from Samsung or listening to tech reviewers back then, you probably heard a whole lot of breathless hype. Stuff that sounded exactly like this quote. Heat, heat, heat. Hello, the world is yours. Yeah, pretty intense. But today, we're pushing past that initial adrenaline rush. We're going to contrast all that wild hype with some objective, grounded analysis of what it's actually like to live on the bleeding edge of mobile hardware.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with breaking the flat glass, then move into the Fold 8 reality check. After that, we'll look at splitting the Fold family, explore the clamshell comeback, and finally, we'll wrap up with the trifold future. Let's get into it. Section 1. Breaking the flat glass. From prototypes to paradigm shifts. Think about it. When you suddenly introduce a hinge into a piece of flat glass, you aren't just changing its physical shape. You're entirely reimagining how we interact with information, how we consume media, and how we multitask. Physical shape literally became the new frontier of mobile innovation. And what's really fascinating here is just how fast this evolution moved. Back in 2018, Samsung was teasing this heavily disguised Galaxy X prototype behind closed doors. Just 1 year later, in 2019, the original Galaxy Fold officially launched to the public. And then by 2020, things fully solidified. Samsung introduced the clamshell-style flip and officially created the Z-series umbrella to house all of their future foldables. In just 3 years, an experimental prototype became a fully unified commercial product category. That is incredibly fast. And this timeline actually brings up a brilliant illustration of how the physical world can unexpectedly impact global technology. As the Galaxy series climbed to global dominance, a really unique problem popped up with that Z naming convention. In March of 2022, following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the letter Z began being used as a prominent symbol by the Russian military. So, to navigate this incredibly sensitive geopolitical landscape, Samsung made a swift operational change. In specific Eastern European markets, places like Ukraine, Moldova, and the Baltic states, they dropped the Z branding entirely. They opted to sell the devices simply as the Galaxy Fold and the Galaxy Flip. It's just a fascinating look at how real-world geopolitical conflicts can directly and abruptly impact global tech branding, basically forcing companies to adapt on the fly to ensure their products aren't inadvertently associated with military symbolism. Section 2. The Fold 8 Reality Check. The Honeymoon Phase. Okay, let's fast forward to the present day with the Galaxy Z Fold 8. Whenever you first get a foldable like this, you immediately enter this sort of honeymoon phase, right? Because it's a genuinely new form factor, it's thinner, the screens look amazing, and honestly, it's just really fun to use. But eventually, the honeymoon ends, and you wake up to the hangover realities. So what compromises do you actually discover once you live with it day to day? Well, first off, the Fold 8 is missing a telephoto camera entirely. And while it does have an upgraded hinge, there's no software included for a halfway open flex mode. If you're watching a full-screen video, you're going to notice the speed or audio is totally lopsided. It comes entirely out of the left side of the open phone. Then there's the squatter aspect ratio, which actually creates game-breaking bugs. It makes games like crossplay literally unplayable because the play button won't even render on the screen. And on top of all that, the main camera has actually been downgraded from previous ultra-high resolutions down to a 50-megapixel sensor. Now, those are just the objective realities of the hardware itself. But staring down a $1,900 price tag? Wow, that makes those compromises hit so much harder. Missing flagship features like top-tier cameras or dealing with annoying app compatibility bugs? Well, it's a pretty bitter pill to swallow when you're paying a premium that far exceeds standard slab smartphones. Section 3. Splitting the Fold family. Base versus Ultra. So Samsung looked at all this data and realized something really fundamental. They just couldn't make one single phone for everyone. They had to create a deliberate split in the lineup based entirely on user intent. And because of that split, we get two very distinct philosophies. On one side, we have the base Z Fold 8. It has this squatter, wider, almost SpongeBob shape. When opened, it gives you a 4:3 inner screen, which basically makes it an incredible mini TV. It's built for people who just want to consume media, watch widescreen videos, and have fun. But on the flip side, we have the newly introduced Z Fold 8 Ultra. Now, this one retains that taller, classic book-style shape.
When you open it up, it essentially gives you two 6.5-inch phone screens side by side. It is perfectly tailored as a mini laptop for hardcore productivity and power users. Now, let's look at how the engineering actually separates these two devices, because it's pretty wild. The base Fold 8 has a 4,800 milliamp hour battery and unfolds to 4.5 millimeters thick, using a standard polymer film behind the screen. And that'll run you $1,900. But the Ultra? The Ultra utilizes brand new silicon carbon battery technology. This lets it pack a larger 5,000 milliamp hour battery into a record-thin 4.1 millimeter profile. It achieves this partly by replacing that polymer film with a flexible titanium plate right beneath the display, pushing the price up to $2,100. It is an absolute masterclass in internal component packaging.
Moving on to Section 4, the clamshell comeback, the Z Flip 8 and next-gen watches. Let's shift our focus over to the other branch of the family tree for a second. This is where we tap into that pure, undeniable nostalgia for the old snapping flip phone, paired with some seriously powerful wearable companions. Take a look at this major shift for the Z Flip 8. The bezels have completely shrunk, and the front cover screen now functionally does everything the inside screen can do. But, this raises a really interesting question about why we even buy these devices. See, my favorite thing about clamshell phones has always been the friction they create. They force you to decide if a notification is actually important enough to physically open the phone and risk falling into a doom-scrolling spiral. So if this fully functional outside display lets you do everything without even opening the device, does it accidentally ruin the intentionality that originally drew people to flip phones in the first place? It's definitely something to think about. And alongside the Flip, we really have to talk about the massive intelligent hardware leaps in the wearable lineup. The standard Watch 9 is now 25% lighter thanks to these clever internal air pockets. It boasts a 20% larger battery and completely eliminates UI lag with the new Wear Elite chip. But the Watch Ultra 2? Oh, it is on another level. It's 12% thinner, packs a 35% larger battery, and features a mind-blowing 5,000 nit display. Let's put that in perspective. It is frankly bright enough to act as a literal flashlight in an emergency. It is the world's brightest smartwatch display. Combine that with its new AI health vitals tracking that actually learns your baselines, and it is a truly powerful companion device. Finally, Section 5, the Tri-Fold future. Convergence. Okay, all of these stepping stones, the growing pains, the hardware leaps, the family splits, they all lead us to the absolute climax of mobile engineering that arrived in December 2025. Just look at these staggering laptop-level specs. The Z Trifold completely unfolds to reveal a massive 10-inch dual dynamic AMOLED display running at 120 Hz. It's powered by the Snapdragon 8 Elite, paired with a frankly ridiculous 16 gigabytes of RAM and up to a full terabyte of storage. Oh, and it brings back that massive 200-megapixel main camera. But perhaps most impressively, Samsung somehow engineered a 5,600 mAh battery into this slender chassis. The engineering required to balance the weight, the thickness, and the heat dissipation across multiple hinges, all while powering 3 screens without turning your pocket into a furnace, is just breathtaking. It seamlessly bridges the gap between your phone, your e-reader, and your primary tablet. Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. We've gone from clunky, disguised prototypes in 2018 to a literal 10-inch tri-folding supercomputer in 2025. The era of the flat, boring piece of glass is officially behind us. But it leaves us with a massive question. Is the Trifold the final destination for the smartphone, or is it just another beginning on the way to rollable screens or maybe even wearable holograms? What frontier is the industry going to shatter next? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on the future.